The morning of September 6, my family and I were preparing for the hurricane. We put rugs by the windows and doors. We stocked up on canned foods. We secured home appliances and huddled together. We made sure everything was safe. For the first half of the hurricane, the house was in great condition. Some of our neighbors' homes were already damaged. When we came up for the eye, we saw that electrical wires were tangled. The poles were underground. Some water machines and other appliances were all over. 1 or 2 houses were gone. Galvanized was everywhere, even in my yard. After the eye, I saw that water was coming in. The wind was raging, and I was hearing all sorts of sounds. First, we ran into the hall and the window blew out. We then moved into the laundry room. Water kept coming in. We then huddled in the bathroom. We slept in there for the night.
Now, we're inside of the master bedroom, and then the wall falls with a small little area. So I crawled through there. One of the chairs in the living room was stuck under it. So I removed it. Took me like around 15 seconds, but we were still safe. So I removed it. Now we're out. Start crawling on the porch. Now all of a sudden we hear a crack. So we start rocking. We hear 2 cracks. Now we start going faster because we know this is gonna fall. Now we went on the concrete path of the porch, and as soon as we got on, the whole wooden path of the porch flies off. Now, we're down low, and we start walking. We start crutch walking. And then we crutch walk all the way downstairs in the same concrete area. Have a mattress in there. We block the door with a mattress, sat on it with our backs on it, and we stayed there on my dad's phone for the entire time.
The tranquility of the Virgin Islands was shattered on Wednesday, September 6, 2017, when Hurricane Irma, a Category 5, struck the territory. There was widespread destruction, and when it was over, the damage was said to be over $3 billion. The hurricane caused extensive damage to property and infrastructure and displaced 22.5% of the population. The government, led by Premier Dr. the Honorable D. Orlando Smith, OBE, following the impact of the storms, ensured that the basic needs of the population were met.
So immediately after the event, the essential organizations, that is the BVI Electricity Corporation, the Solid Waste Department, and other departments, in particular Ministry of Communications, got to work from day one. And they continue working day and night to be able to get those important and integral infrastructures up so that this territory can begin that process of restoration. And I really must say how I admired and respected the work that they did, especially those 2 departments in government, that is the BVI Electricity Department and the people in solid waste, and water and sewage, etc.
Substantial support was received from regional and international governments, including the OECS, CARICOM, the United Kingdom, and Canada. Governor His Excellency Augustus Jaspert said we all have memories of the last year, which was incredibly demanding and challenging.
Well, also I know all of us will have memories of loss, of shock, of fear, and we know there were people at the time some despicable people who took advantage of the situation to exacerbate the fear that we all faced during that time. But for me, the abiding memory I think will always stay in my mind is actually the memory after the storm of how amazingly strong and resilient people were. I was out right across the territory in different communities, and people weren't despairing, people weren't holding up their hands and giving up. People were instantly getting out, supporting each other, helping each other out, staying positive, thinking through what they could do to help themselves but also help others.
Governor Augustus Jaspard said, "The assistance given by the government of the United Kingdom was critical following the impact of the devastating hurricane."
The UK support has come in three phases. The first phase was humanitarian and security support, helping us to get back on our feet, which we were staying strong, and the UK helped us in a number of ways to do that with some of those things that I mentioned. Then there was a second phase about helping us restore our critical infrastructure and helping us sort of get going again. So the UK has provided support to fund electricity. We had a team of, actually they were Canadian linesmen, but funded from the United Kingdom to help probably about 25-30% of all of the poles across the territory, get them re-established, help get power back on, with the BVI doing an excellent job to really make sure that people didn't have a lack of power for a long time. Helping to store water, helping to work on roads, debris management, training schemes, right across all areas to help us build back in a strong way. At the same time providing significant support for our security. So we had, obviously we had soldiers here for quite a while at the beginning, but we've also had support to repair the prison, to improve or support improving the police service. And we had obviously a number of UK, United Kingdom officers, as well as officers from Bermuda and Cayman who were funded by the United Kingdom here at the time as well. Now the UK support is moving into a long-term phase to support the BVI's plan and to support our long-term plan for recovery and development. The UK has offered a loan guarantee, which essentially means the ability for the territory to do more and do it faster and do it cheaper. They can get money in to meet the projects to be able to then get on and get our long-term recovery sorted and back to how we want things to be.
The governor expressed his complete admiration and gratitude to the territory's public officers for all they have done.
On the evening of the storm, I know and I met many public servants who are out supporting people, whether it's in helping save lives in the response or helping in the hospital or out in shelters, instantly clearing roads, getting out, and that has stayed throughout. The public servants have put what they do best, which is serving the public, at their heart, and I've seen that. I'm very conscious though that many public servants still have conditions that are difficult at home and then come into work to conditions that are difficult. That's an absolute priority for me, that we get the buildings repaired, we get the conditions back to where they are, and indeed take this opportunity to get them even better than they were. We transform the public service. We have the public service as the recognising and being received as the wonderful people that they are, delivering for the territory, but we need to also make sure that it's not, we're not complacent about how public servants are operating in the moment and challenges they face. I'm very conscious of it, and it's a priority to improve those conditions.
It's 1 year later, and the government has made significant efforts to restore the territory to a state of normalcy. Premier Smith said, "Significant work has been done in several areas, including the financial services sector."
Recognizing that the financial services industry is very important in the economy of the BVI, it was structured in such a way so that Virgin, which is the virtual integrated regulatory and registry network, was provided with backups, generating backup systems, so that even though everything else was down, our corporate services providers could continue to work from day one in anywhere in the world, right? In fact, it was down for very briefly for a few hours when we had to switch to backup generator, but it came up immediately, and because of that, we were able to keep that service going. Another important factor is that the government of St. Lucia was able to, through the courts, the courts of the OECS court, was able to assist us in setting up a commercial court in St. Lucia temporarily until we get those restored. So the fact that Virgin was able to operate immediately, the fact that we were able to set up a temporary court in St. Lucia, to be able to do all that is necessary as far as the legal aspects are concerned, those are the things that helped us to be able to maintain what we do in financial services.
The territory's infrastructure, including roads and buildings, were severely damaged during the passage of the hurricanes. Minister for Communications and Works, Honorable Mark Vanterpool, says the recovery and restoration work continues.
Well, as you know, we are responsible to make sure that a couple of things that were important after the hurricane were essential to be back up and running. One was electricity. That took us a couple of months, a lot shorter than we thought. The corporation did an excellent job. We got it back up and running mostly by December last year. So we were happy to be back up and running electricity, which is important for a tourism product to make sure that people have electricity at their hotels and so on. And then we are also responsible for roads, infrastructure, which the tourists and everyone in the territory need to make sure the roads are intact. We had a lot of difficulty with roads after the storm last year, not just the hurricane, but the flood in August last year, which damaged a lot of our roads. And then we had a lot of rains after the storm, October and November last year, which really gave us a hard challenge with roads. So we have temporarily repaired a lot of the roads, especially the ones from the airport down along the West End. We still have some work to do there. And we are continuing the project to get our roads back up and running in at least a usable manner for motorists throughout the territory. The other side of it that was essential for not just tourists but residents was to make sure water was available after the storms. We had prepared before the storms to make sure water was quickly available after. We got that going, but we still have some challenges in getting water, especially to the western end, the Seacow Bay, Duff's Bottom Basin. We are working on that right now on a program to get it across the mountain and down to Hannah Hill and provide water in that area. So hopefully next month or 6 weeks or so, we can have a more constant flow of water in the Seacow Bay, Duff's Bottom Basin area. And then we also, as a team for the ministry, want to make sure that the city is up and running, that the roads are clear, the sidewalks are passable and easily traversable, especially for tourists who come with wheelchair situations and so on. So we've been working on that over the last several months, and we were happy last week to receive the first large cruise ship where we want to test what we have done, and we're glad that we were able to receive the ship, and I believe the passengers were very happy in their return in terms of using the infrastructure in the territory, as buses were able to travel on the roads, take tourists around, people were able to walk through the city of Rotown and different places. And then we were able to make sure our ports were working well also to make sure that tourists could move from one port to the next, as well as our job that we have to do with our ferry operators in bringing people into the territory. As you know, right after Irma, our main Rotown dock was damaged. West End is still damaged, but we got Rotown back up and running so that instead of using the cruise pier for our passengers on the ferry operators, we are able to use our Rotown dock now, one side of it at least, the other side is still damaged. And then we're working on the West End to get that port up and running. Hopefully in the next 6 weeks to 2 months, we should have the West End port open for ferry passengers as well. So all of these are infrastructural things that we are doing to make sure that our tourists as well as residents can enjoy the amenities again. It takes a little time, more time than we would have liked, but we're happy that we are making some progress.
The territory's tourism sector also suffered extensive damage, and work continues to get its infrastructure back to the required standards to enable large ships to return to the territory. Locally, cleanup of the territory is being done through the collaborative efforts of the private and public sector through the Cruise Stakeholders Committee. The committee was formed to ensure that the final stages of the cleanup of tourist attractions and the main arteries of the territory's roads are suitable for residents and visitors.
One of the important things in having visitors to the show is preparing to be able to welcome them so they have a good time and appreciate being here and be able to then return. And that's important both to the BVI and also important to the industry. And so that was very important that we got to work very early on cleaning up the BVI. And we were able to do it to the satisfaction, so to speak, of the cruise lines. We were able to do it so that the persons in the charter boat industry were able to get their fleets working again. And we also were able to give the support that is needed to all the industries and all the visitors. So that I was very happy when Disney came the other day. The persons and the crew were very pleased with what they saw in BVI. And in fact, most of those people with whom I spoke were delighted and said they will be returning.
The government said rebuilding the BVI tourism brand must be based on 4 principles, including protecting the BVI brand position globally, rebuilding tourism infrastructure to a Category 5 standard on the land side and on the marine side in designing boat storage facilities to withstand the same, leapfrogging wherever possible, competitive advantage in areas such as environmental management, yachting, private islands, unique restaurants and beach bars, resort development and island hopping capabilities, and positioning the BVI to attract new investment in the hospitality industry. The terrestrial and marine environment suffered extensive damage during the passage of the hurricanes. Minister of Natural Resources and Labor, Honorable Kedrick Pickering, said, "Cleaning up of the environment is a work in progress."
Just reflecting on it, on the day after Hurricane Irma, when most of us came out, I don't think there was much for us to hope for when we saw the devastation. And the devastation was both in the marine environment and the terrestrial environment. But I think it's fair to say that the marine environment, based on where we are and what we depend on for our livelihood, which is tourism, was severely impacted with all the boats that were destroyed. And so the major thrust of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Labor since Hurricane Irma was geared towards cleaning up the marine environment. And it is still very much a work in progress, because we did a study not too long ago that showed that there were something in the order of over 250 vessels that still resting either on the near shore, on the shoreline, or submerged in the waters around the BVI. And although we've come a mighty long way in terms of cleaning up that space, we still have a way to go to ensure that the marine environment is cleaned up.
Honorable Pickering said, government is providing assistance to farmers and fishermen to enable them to rebuild their livelihoods. He added that government will continue to source funds to provide more aid to the workers in the fishing and farming sectors.
What we've done is that, and we recently obtained the water tanks. Last week we obtained the water tanks that are going to be distributed to the farmers, the various farmers throughout the BVI, recognizing that we're talking all the 4 major islands, it's not on the island of Tortola. And we're importing supplies to help with respect to fencing and other small bits and pieces of equipment that can be distributed to help the farmers. With respect to the fishermen, what we've done is that we've looked at accessing equipment such as fish trap wires, all the other bits and pieces that will help any number of persons to get back on their feet. At this point in time, it has been almost impossible to help persons with their boats because we just do not have that level of funding. When you consider that part and parcel of helping fishermen is also to help clean up the marine space.
The Comprehensive Recovery Program also includes the importation of skilled labor to assist in the rebuilding of homes and other buildings. Honorable Pickering spoke on the significance of the project.
What the government decided to do from a policy point of view, recognizing the need for skilled labor in the country, was to put a policy in place that gave the minister and the department the authority to issue work permit waivers for up to 3 months to skilled laborers, so that locally all the employers, contractors, etc., who need skilled laborers can apply directly to the minister with the necessary information about the workers themselves, in the police record, their passport details. And eventually we also added they had to show where the persons were going to be housed, where they were going to be living. That program has been in place now for 10, 11 months. And from where I sit, it seemed to have worked very well in terms of getting skilled labor into the country. It is at a point now where it is 1 year on from the storm, so we have to now review it to see, should it continue, should it be modified, what are the pros and cons, because you can well imagine that with a program of this nature, and now we have imported over 2,000 workers into the country, there are likely to be some effects that were not foreseen. And so it is time for a review of the policy, and the government will make a decision whether it should continue, how it should continue, and probably for how long as we move forward.
Thriving small business development contributes to the economic development of any society. Several initiatives are being implemented by the Department of Trade, Investment Promotion, and Consumer Affairs to assist small and medium-sized businesses who were affected by the hurricane. Premier Smith said his government places priority on the development of small businesses and will continue to do its part to get them back up and running.
We, with the help of our friends from the Bank of Asia, we were able to distribute generators to many small businesses so they can get up and running very quickly. We also gave grants to some other of the small businesses. As we continue, of course, we have to continue to provide these resources and assistance to businesses. So we're looking at reviewing the entire program so we can be as effective as possible.
The education sector suffered significant damage to its infrastructure following the passage of the hurricanes, and schools are being rebuilt through public-private partnerships. According to Minister for Education, Honorable Myron Walwyn, government is doing its best with the available resources to get the educational facilities back up and functioning.
We had 6 of our schools that were totally devastated as a result of the hurricane activities. One of the things that we did immediately after the hurricane was to go out to assess the damage, because certainly we knew from the onset that the education sector had a major role to play in the recovery efforts of the country. Not just the importance of getting the students back into instructions only, but also at that critical point to be able to allow parents to go out into the community and do the things that they need to do to help us to return to normalcy as quickly as possible. So we went out, we did that, we assessed schools. Some schools were deemed usable, some deemed unusable. And the schools that were deemed usable, we set a team out again to see what needed to be done to repair those schools, to get them into a state of readiness for instructions, albeit not at the level that they were before the passage of the hurricane. We were able to get that done. We were able within 1 month of the hurricane to have students between 0 and 8 years old, and also our senior students in secondary school in instructions. The younger ones, of course, as I said before, needed so that the parents as well can get out into the community and do work. And then we had our senior students who were getting prepared for their examinations, external examinations. And so we need to get that done. So we were able to get that done. Within 2 months, we were able to get all the children back into school. This includes the primary school and also the 8th Star Community College. So a significant amount of work went into getting that done during that time. We had a number of donors. We put out a clarion call for support to get schools ready. So we didn't do all that work by ourselves in relation to the schools that were deemed usable, that we had to do remedial works on. A number of businesses, local businesses, came forward to assist us. And of course, by then, a number of international agencies were already on the ground, UNICEF and others, who came to our aid. But what is important for me to note is the corporate the corporate efforts, and I saw that whole issue of corporate citizenship and corporate responsibility come alive after the hurricane, because most of the schools that were deemed unusable, we were able to get persons, private entities and individuals to help us with the rebuilding efforts. For instance, right now in Virgin Gorda, we have the Walnut Bay Foundation helping us with a total rebuild of the Robinson O'Neill Memorial School, which we expect will be opened in the first term of this academic year. We had Peter Haycraft and his team, Rotong Wholesale Trading, came forward to help us with building rebuilding the Ennis Adams pre-primary school. We had Mr. Larry Page and his group assisting us with schools like Leronova Delville and the Just Van Dyke Primary School. Social Security Board has taken on the Enid Scatliff pre-primary, which is going quite well. We expect that to be opened as well within the first term of this new academic year. And we've had other persons that have come forward to help us with rebuilding schools, but because so much damage took place all at once, we can't get everything done all at once. But I think things are looking up, and when I reflect on a year ago, I think my staff at the ministry did an awesome job.
The minister paid tribute to all the stakeholders in education who offered humane service to get the facilities in order to enable the reopening of schools following the hurricanes. The 2018-2019 school year is about to begin for students of all public schools in the territory, and the Minister for Education is encouraging students to take their education seriously.
One of the things that certainly we did do following the passage of the hurricane, but in that very short period of time before we started formal instructions in the classroom, was that we started a program called Return to Happiness in conjunction with UNICEF to be able to help students to be able to cope with what has happened to them and try, as it were, to bring them back to some level of normalcy from a mental perspective. I want to say to them, that the students, that things are not at 100%, but it doesn't mean that you should not give 100%. I remember making a statement, and some persons criticize the statement, but I still stand by it, that you can deliver instructions anywhere, even under a tree. I remember when I used to go to Alexandrina Middle School, it was called St. Philip's School in Bartlesby those days. In the afternoon, the place was so hot that we would put our chairs on our head and go out under the mango tree, and the teacher would bring the board out and teach us there, and we learned. Let us not get, while we return the schools to the level of normalcy and to the environment that you have grown accustomed to, do not let that be an impediment or an excuse for you for not learning, because you can learn anywhere. We have very good instructors. We are doing the best that we can in the ministry to work along with them to improve their teaching methods, and they're doing quite well. We're doing a lot of professional development and so forth. Make it easy for your teachers. Take ownership of your own education, because many of the students in the system are now at the point where they're responsible for their own education. And as a teacher puts out knowledge and facilitates learning, facilitate the learning process, your role is to make sure that you receive that and add on that and become creative thinkers and be disciplined, both in your studies and also in terms of manners and respect for the teachers, so that the environment in the school, notwithstanding the physical plant, can still be one that is conducive to learning.
The restoration and redevelopment of public health facilities continued during the year. Minister of Health and Social Development, Honorable Ronnie Skelton, said the health sector was significantly damaged.
Hurricane Irma and Maria, they really did extensive damages to the health sector and into some of our social structures. But the health sector in particular, the people's hospital, the clinics on the outside, they were all damaged in some way, some much more serious than others. The people's hospital and its whole compound, while there were damages to the old structure and the glass in some of the new structure were broken, you can see that it stood the strength of the both hurricanes, and it became really the anchor for the whole BVI society. This is where people came to do whatever needed to be done to get attention, medical attention, to get powers to power their cell phones and all sorts of stuff. So this became like the anchor for the society. All the disaster preparedness people meetings were held here. So the structure, the people's hospital structure, was built to withstand Category 5 hurricanes and earthquakes of 7 on the Richter scale. So it was tested by the hurricanes, and hopefully it will not be tested by an earthquake. We had the clinics in Virgin Gorda, East End, Long Loc, those in Jospin Dykes and West End. They were all substantially damaged, but quite a number most of them are repaired now to a level that we can operate out of them, except the one in the Stickett in Long Loc and the one in Jospin Dykes that is being under repair, and it's substantially finished. So we hope that within the next 30 days or so we'll be able to reopen those facilities.
Honorable Ronnie Skelton paid tribute to the various organizations, including the Pan American Health Organization, who has contributed equipment and other areas of assistance to the recovery process.
We receive extensive assistance from quite a number of donors I don't want to leave out any, but it was extensive, but I know the Pan American Health Organization, they responded to our needs quickly. And one of the facilities that, although it's not classified as a medical facility, the Dina Donovan's home that we've seen there, they fully refurbished that from the ground up. They responded with the needs for equipment and medicine. And so the private sector, the NGOs, the Red Cross, they all were involved in assisting us and making sure that the healthcare system, came back up and respond to the need of the community as quickly as possible.
Minister Skelton also outlined the social programs in place to assist homeowners and other persons in returning to some normalcy.
We had the British government through DFID and the Red Cross, who assisted in giving homeowners a level of assistance immediately after the hurricane that was administered by us. We were basically giving them the information to the people that needed the help. And people were given the basic stuff first, food and water and monies to really keep them in the initial stage of the aftermath of the Irma and Maria. But after that, now we have to concentrate on shelters. And again, the British government has assisted in supplying material for us to be able to repair some homes. And Rotary also have done a significant amount of work in assisting us in rebuilding homes. And on top of that, the government has allocated $15 million, which we already start giving to people and start rebuilding homes. But we start with the most vulnerable first. And there's a lot we have done the analysis here, but there's a lot of other people that needs assistance. It's not because they have a big house or they have you think that they are well off, but Hurricane Irma and Maria, if you had financial problems before, you know, it multiplied those problems. So while you may think someone doesn't need help, when you really understand their circumstances, they really need help. And we here at the Ministry of Health are going to try our best to see if we can get that help for those individuals.
The complete recovery and restoration of the territory is being managed by the Recovery Development Agency, established through an act in the House of Assembly. The agency is charged with the implementation of the government's Recovery and Development Plan through an effective, efficient, and transparent process. The agency is chaired by Dr. Robert Mathavius, and former civil servant and military officer and investment banker Mr. Paul Bailey is the chief executive officer. Mr. Bailey outlined the agency's mandate.
The areas we're looking at the moment is in planning. We need to really think about how we plan for the next 5 years, because it is a limited life of this body. It only exists for 5 years. So planning those operations that we need to undertake. Secondly is around how do we procure that, and that's a very important function, because we will be sourcing money from a lot of areas. Firstly and foremost from the government of the British Virgin Islands, but also through the government of the UK government. We have many funding agencies. At the moment we've got the Caribbean Development Bank, which is a very important partner to BVI, but we'll be looking at other sources of debt finance, working again closely through the Ministry of Finance to do that. And also we've got, most importantly, is the private sector, individuals and NGOs who want to come and help. We've also have a very strong operational focus, because the RDA is all about delivery. And in that context, what we are doing is working very, very closely with the ministries. Our role is to deliver on what the ministries require us to do. So our focus for the last month since I've been on board has been working on the 6-month accelerator plan that the government has given us to focus on. So we've been working with each ministry and developing and making sure we have identified the priorities that they want and in what order, and also scoping those priorities and what can we achieve in the next 6 months that's absolute importance to BVI and to the ministries concerned.
The agency has commenced its work towards recovery and restoration and is undertaking several projects.
Many people will be aware of the special waste clearance project that's underway. So we've worked with that, the Ministry of Health and Social Development to deliver that very closely. We've been encouraging local people to tender, not only here but on the other outlying islands, Joss Van Dyke, Virgin Gorda and Anegada, because one of our key focuses is not only getting the recovery done and in time moving into the development phase, but we are really focused on building local capability. And we've spent a lot of time already on the islands encouraging local contractors to bid for work. We've just issued a tender for the reconstruction and rebuild of 2 police stations, one on Joss Van Dyke and one on Virgin Gorda. And we're very hopeful that local contractors will come through so that we can work with them over time and develop their local capability. Because if we can spend money here that stays on the islands, provides jobs, enables firms to develop and grow and bring on more staff and train them up to what we need to do. Because the task before us is enormous. That will be an outcome that will be good not only for the RDA, but it will be good for the ministries, for government, and also for the people of BVI.
The agency has a lifespan of 5 years, and it is expected that the following expectations will be met.
We are here to do the work around recovery. The ministries have really important work, day-to-day work of providing the essential services that ministries do. What we have is a situation where we have a substantial amount of work to be done for recovery, to get the island back to its full operational focus and delivery. So the recovery part of that rebuild has been passed to the IDA to do. But we are operating that on behalf of the ministries. And our first and foremost thing is our client, as our ministries, is to go and talk to them about what is it that they need and what is their priorities that they want us to deliver on. So not only do we identify the priorities and we scope them in terms of the size and what it looks like, but also what happens after that. And as we roll these projects out, we're involving the ministries, as we have done on the special waste projects, as we will do on all subsequent projects, intimately, day to day in some cases, on the rollout of the projects. Because at the end of the period, why that is so important to have the ministries involved is because we will hand the projects back to the ministry concerned, whatever it may be. And so we want to hand back something that is totally what they wanted. And if we don't do that, and by constantly checking with them, by making sure our concept is right, that we've procured the right thing, then we won't have done our job properly. So we're building an extremely close relationship with the ministries, with the PSs, and indeed with the ministers as well. But we have to deliver what the ministries want.
The passage of the hurricanes and other weather events of last year have reinforced the message that climate change is real and must be taken seriously. Dr. Pickering said the Climate Change Division in his ministry will continue its work to inform the territory about the impacts of this phenomenon.
From the government's point of view, and more specifically the Ministry of Natural Resources and Labor through its Climate Change Division, have been working diligently and assiduously to bring the issue to the forefront. Certainly myself as minister have been sounding the alarm in not only locally but regionally, and in a lot of ways on behalf of the overseas countries and territories have been preaching the gospel, so to speak, internationally to get people to understand, and especially the bigger countries to appreciate that the effects of climate change are likely to affect islands and island communities much more intensely than the bigger countries, because some of the predominant effects of climate change have to do with the temperature rise and the rise in sea levels. Rise in sea levels has untoward effects for coastal communities, and most people who live on islands live on the coast. And look at where we are right now in the midst of the hurricane season, and it has been a relatively quiet season comparatively speaking to last year. And that is where the danger lies. The effects are unpredictable, so to speak. But we do know that flooding, droughts, more intense storms, dryness for prolonged periods of time, and all those effects, because you may have heard, like for instance, Australia, in certain parts of Australia, which is their famine belt, has undergone a tremendous drought over their spring. So we will continue to do what we can.
There are several lessons to be learned from the passage of Hurricane Irma.
We just have to be vigilant. You know, I think it was one of our local leaders, the late Howard R. Penn, who said that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And so if you extend that to say that if we are going to be prepared, if we are going to ensure that with respect to climate change and its effect on all of us, we just have to remain vigilant. Vigilance in turn will help us to prepare ourselves and to help us to minimize the effects of whatever climate change may throw at us.
the lesson that I would take away, mostly for myself, is the importance of community and the importance of living good with people. When a country becomes prosperous, in the way that our country has become prosperous, sometimes you forget people. You forget your neighbors. You don't say hello anymore. Nobody looks out for anybody anymore because everybody busy with their own life. And sometimes you start to turn your nose up on other people as well when success happens. That's what happens sometimes with human beings. And after the hurricane, we all were back at ground zero, back at the same level. And we recognized that you had to help people who were neighbors that you didn't talk to for years. Some of them you didn't even see because the bush grew up and you couldn't see their home. And that community spirit that I saw, with everybody coming together, trying to help each other, persons coming out, even the persons who had heavy equipment, who were not engaged by the government at all, came out, brought the machines and the trucks and so forth, and came out to clear the roads and clear people who were in distress and so forth. I want us to build on that and not to return to some of the old ways that we had when it came to community and living good with people.
We never experienced that magnitude of hurricane before, so we now have to study how we can build the buildings back stronger to resist Category 5 hurricanes or more. So we're looking at that. We have a lot of government buildings are still damaged, and we are beginning to try to get those back on track, but we want to make sure they're built back in a strong enough manner that can withstand these types of hurricanes. So we want to make sure that we're preparing a new building code that can advise builders how to build, how to prepare for that type of hurricane and that type of storm. We also want to make sure that our shelters that we build are strong enough to deal with that also, as we learned. Those are some lessons we learned from the past. We were happy that our major ports were not heavily damaged, but we were able to get food and water and so on back running right after the storm. And that's a lesson that we want to make sure we prepare to have that type of thing in case there's a major disaster like that again. So a lot of lessons learned. You know, we are learning how to build back as quickly as possible, but yet build back as best as possible. So we're working at that.
Actually a timely reminder for us all, because we are obviously in the hurricane season now. We shouldn't be complacent at any point, and we should keep preparing. We're doing a lot as a government to repair and restore our disaster management services and our emergency services, but also individuals, you know, what they can do to be ready and to stay ready. For me, a number of lessons we've learnt from last year. You know, the importance of communications, which really hindered us as a territory early on because of the devastation. The ability to respond and connect right across the territory was a critical part in it. But I'm confident we're addressing all of those areas. We're rebuilding shelters, we're putting in place contingency stocks so if the sister islands or any district is cut off. We're UK Support are putting in stronger communications links across the territory as well. So that, and we pray we never again face what we faced, but we face it, if we did ever have it, in a stronger, more confident position. But for the public, this isn't just a government responsibility. The first responsibility starts with looking after yourself, looking after your community, that same amazing spirit which just, well, at times made me cry when I was out and about, seeing that strength and that resilience from people. That is still needed as we approach the height of the hurricane season and as we continue on our recovery.
We have learned that the resources of that is required after the disaster, it needs to be something that we need to pay attention to, and where people live and whether or not they're going to be cut off from the facilities and they can't get to them, because you know it's needed. Because if you take the Adina Donovan zone where the older people are living, if people are cut off from that facility and there is a problem, then we can be in a situation that we don't want to be in. So while looking at the physical structure, building stronger, better greenery, the human resource of the country, we need to pay a little attention, much more attention to it.
The government of the Virgin Islands has pledged to do what is best for the people and for the Virgin Islands, and this includes protecting their interests. The team, led by Dr. Smith, is continuing to work tirelessly to ensure that the lives of residents are significantly improved following the passage of the weather events of 2017.
What I would say is that we must have patience, but we must all work together. I am very confident that what we have done so far has been good. I want to thank all the persons in the BVI, both residents, visitors, donors, everybody, for where we are today. We still have a journey to go, but the future looks bright. And I'm confident that once we continue to do what we're doing now, we'll be able to return the BVI to where it once was, a shining light in the Caribbean.